Last night's 11th-hour announcement on land, but it does, however, deal with the aspirations of many South Africans. The President announced that the ANC would draft a proposed amendment to the Constitution to ensure that it explicitly allows for land to be expropriated without compensation. The ANC had already decided at its national conference in December to support the expropriation of land without compensation. The President and the ANC today acknowledging that there is a view that the Constitution already allows for this. However, he said, and the ANC saying today, that they've heard the issues raised by people during the land hearings across South Africa who say they want the land clause to be explicit. Let's discuss now with political analyst Somadoda Fikeni. Thank you for joining us on the line, in our studio rather, in Pretoria. Prof, so firstly, the ANC today, I guess there was nothing new sort of enforcing President Cyril Ramaphosas' message.
Well, I do think that it's a message that we should have expected, because since the Nasrec conference, they have indicated their stated choice, and with a majority of provinces now having, voiced out that there need be a change in this particular clause of the Constitution or some clarity. And the political context as well, with elections coming, they would not have wanted EFF and other political parties to have the sole ownership in riding on the wave of this demand for change.
I agree with you because the ANC had already expressed support. What is the harm of taking the ambiguity out? So do you think the shock expressed was perhaps a bit overblown?
I do think that this was always going to be a position that would divide people. In the first instance, the confusion as to whether you have the president of the country and the president of the party, conflated in a position of expressing what was clearly a party position. Remember that ordinary people, some of them think that the process, therefore, it's a done deal. And they may not understand that he merely was expressing a party position, but the process will still continue. And secondly, we do have the markets on the other side, which have always been jittery about this particular issue, hence the reaction by some of those in the market. But frankly speaking, if you come to think of it, all political party leaders have been expressing what their party positions are, irrespective of the processes that were going on.
Well, there is speculation about the president's own feelings on this. It is potentially a threat to his investment drive. Despite his own feelings, do you think, like you were saying earlier, he's in a political bind?
Certainly, the one thing the president would have resisted, together with those supporting him, would have resisted the notion that within the ANC itself, this position belongs to a particular faction. Hence, he at once has to balance the internal dynamics of the ANC politics, but at the same time be mindful of the fact that he's heading a country, he's trying to woo investors, but investors in the main would not necessarily want the current apartheid and colonial geography to remain, but rather they are demanding an immediate policy certainty which will not be changing all the time, so that they can calculate their risk and opportunities when they want to invest. But besides that, the fixation with external investors, we hardly ever talk about our own internal investors in the main. So I do think that the country should be very clear about its national interest and also its policy programs.
So do you agree then that expropriation, fait accompli, but the ANC needs to urgently clarify exactly which land may be expropriated?
I do think that when you look at the number of parties which have supported the notion of the review of the Constitution, that subsection of Chapter 25 is quite overwhelming, so it will take them through the threshold of approval. But the key thing will be the elaboration and the specification, because that clause was always there to say land can be expropriated without compensation in the interest of public good. Now, the key test will be which land will be available for such expropriation without compensation. You do know that there is government land. We do know that there are absentee landlords. We do know that there are some productive farms, some of them having been under the support of banking institutions or government, not necessarily profitable. And the whole range of choices are there. The most important thing will be to specify who, where, and what is going to happen. And that brings the matter to rest once and for all, because the uncertainty is the one that is more dangerous than any policy choice that is made by the country.
Indeed, and overall, I guess there are two arguments here. The one is that just the debate is creating uncertainty, hurting South Africa, hurting the economy. On the other hand, we need to address inequality. Land redress may lead to that better equality, greater equality, and we need to do that to get the economy on a better footing. But do you think that the ANC is being wise, balancing those two, and the way it's going about this?
Well, it would be very difficult to judge the wisdom or otherwise, but do know that there is one thing we should take into account. It's an election season when all political parties are possessed by spirits of elections. Therefore, they may start revving up some of the rhetoric right across the political spectrum, and none of these parties may want to be left behind. Once those elections have passed, you may have a sense of pragmatism, and it is for that reason that there is a say that politicians campaign in poetry, but they rule in prose. That's when pragmatism comes in.
So what does that mean? What will we see before the election, and what will we see after the election?
Before the elections, you may see the issue of land and the issue and the drive for transformation being revved up, and sometimes promises which are not necessarily realistic will be presented, and there may even be efforts to start delivering on some of the promises which have not been delivered. And after elections, you may begin to have some of the positions slowing down. Some talk of pragmatic positions, because one, parties will know their electoral strength, and therefore they will bargain knowing exactly what they have and what they are capable of. But the issue of socio-economic transformation has been a low signal boiling below the surface, and it is an issue that can no longer be postponed without social and political risk.
So what does this mean for the EFF? How does it up the ante now that, like you say, the ANC is trying to move categorically into its space?
I do think that you may have contesting positions where each one of the parties would claim that we own this particular policy position, but they may differ on the details on how that particular clause may be phrased. You may even have some of the parties which traditionally have always been identifying land as being central, such as the Pan-Africanist Congress, saying all these parties which are claiming the issue are more recent to the subject. So you will have that going to elections. At the same time, on the other side, the DA, COPE, Freedom Front Plus, if they insist on the issue not even being put on the table, they might find that the popular resonance and the popular sentiment may go against them, and they might be seen as promoting or protecting the propertied class. So it's how they package their message that becomes very important, not to be seen as being against the obvious thing of saying inequalities in the distribution of wealth and land ought to be addressed as a matter of urgency.
All right, thank you very much. Political analyst Samadoda Fikeni responding to the ANC's announcement. What will other parties possibly do?